Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Show No Mercy event, in which the Bane of Mercy is added to the game. So, this troop is actually pretty good. Pretty meta-defining. Generally we only get like maybe 2-3 really good glory troops per year, and this is, well, one of them. So, of course, you can stock up on yellow-blue arcanes if you need to off this troop, and one of the immediate things you want to go upgrade is this troop itself. Of course, starting off, Empower, that alone has already made it viable. There's almost no Empower troops in the game that are not viable. There are a few very rare exceptions to that. But generally speaking, anything with Empower is at least situationally usable. However, if you notice his name, the Bane of Mercy, this of course is basically an inverse troop of Mercy. For any of you that don't know, Mercy was actually the first Empower troop ever added to the game. It cleanses all troops. It's a green-blue 12 mana cost that has, of course, Empower. And it cleanses all allies, gives some health to the weakest one, and converts purple to yellow. Well, this basically does the inverse of that. It does have one higher mana cost, as its ability is really good. If anything, they might even need to make that higher. But it gives a bunch of attack to the first ally, which isn't anything special. We already have something that does this, and converts all yellow to skull. Not this one, but something else in the game already does basically that. Empower into give a bunch of attack to first ally and giving them some skulls. However, this doesn't do skulls. It does something a bit different. It gets to convert all yellow to purple, which of course is used for mana accumulation, and then inflicts curse on all enemies, with that being the main thing. Of course, Mercy does cleanse to all allies, but it's not bless to all allies. This does curse, which basically does two things. Essentially dispel them if they don't already have bless on them, as well as, well, putting curse on them. This will allow you to devour them, place any status effect that you want on it, which you can synergize with anything that does a lot of them, like Elementals, for example, and gives a lot of opportunity to just instantly 4 times curse. First turn, 4 times curse is huge. This is great for Iron Gut, Elementals, really anything in the game that wants to apply a specific effect and doesn't want to deal with immunities on the opposing team, as this will get rid of all of them except that one that's immune to basically everything. But it will bypass things like Impervious, which is absolutely great. So this has a lot of potential, if nothing else, just to be used for its turn 1 4 times curse. And on top of that, it's feeding you a bunch of purple, it's giving you a bunch of attacks, so you could do this with Skull Spam, a lot of purple Skull Spammers out there that you can end up synergizing this with. Definitely a lot of interesting things. We are going to be going over one team and using it, just kind of messing around. However, we are going to need to do a dedicated video to this a little bit later this week, as there's going to be a lot of things we could do with this, but it needs more testing. I just haven't really had the chance to mess around with it too much yet, but definitely one to keep an eye on, and definitely use, definitely get, definitely max. And definitely make sure to do that. It is, I believe, 16 copies. So, sorry, wait, I can't get to 16. No, it won't let me get to 16. I was going to see how much glory that is. Well, it's 400 times 16. I can't do that in my head off the moment too early in the morning. But whatever that is, it's slightly less than 8,000. It's like 6,400 or so. But whatever that is, definitely make sure to do that this week, as a very, very good troop. Anyways, speaking of good troops, event key drop table, not so much. So as far as the event key drop table is concerned, it is associated to that of Sin of Maraj. And if we go over there real quick, definitely one of the kingdoms that doesn't have as many troops in it. If we go and do that, we'll see a nice list. Actually, let me do show all, though I don't think I'm missing anything. But anyways, as far as this drop table is concerned, the troops that are not in drop table, I believe, are just the 4 faction troops, which include all 4 of them from the Depths of Sin. Not to be confused with Sin of Maraj, as they both have a very similar name. But the 4 Depths of Sin troops are not available. If you are opening keys, you're probably looking for Scourge of Honor. Scourge of Honor is basically Phoenicia, but true damage. Really great true damager, among one of the better ones in the entire game. Depending on the context of your team, potentially the absolute best in the entire game. Definitely high up there. It's used for various true damage teams, even on its own. Just has a good damage AoE pressure. Ends up doing a bunch of true damage and gains a bunch of mana back based on cursed and diseased enemies. And of course, we have 4 times curse off that new troop, and even if you don't have that, well, he gets to do disease and curse on his final trait, so you don't even need to put a dedicated troop on your team to do that. He just does it on his own, which is kind of nice, and he just gets a bunch of his mana back. Really good in situations where 2 casts of Scourge of Honor will win the battle, as he'll cast, get most of his mana back, get it back up real quickly off of that, get the last like 10-ish or however much he needs, and then boom, you just win out. And that's generally a strategy. Cast him twice, and he gets the second one a little bit quicker than the first. So that's probably the main reason why you're opening them. Double Lust is occasionally used, but you can't do this in Guild Wars, so it's not really too relevant. You could do it for PvP defend, but PvP defend doesn't matter much. Barcast is kind of good as you're progressing through the game, so if you're super early on in the game, There's actually a mythic, I believe, that was available last week. I was mentioning something about it last week. But this one's basically the better version of the mythic, even though it's only an epic rarity troop. So a lot more accessible and guaranteed burn fairy fire on 2 enemies, which is very solid while also damage pressuring on them. And there's some weird gimmicks like Gluttony, good early game Devourer, things you probably might already have laying around. But if you're opening event keys this week, it is almost purely for Scourge of Honor. It's the main thing that you're looking for. Unfortunately, you might end up getting Queen of Sin, which would not be ideal. But she's okay, but just not as good as other options out there. Anyways, as far as that, Sin of Maraj does reach 17 star, so if you do want to use the event keys to get up, though of course it's not anywhere near close to a milestone, so if you want to do it to 10 star, that could end up working, but it's still a whiles away from 20 star due to its lack of troops, so we'll take a little while before it ends up hitting all the way over there. As far as guild-related events, we only have one, because this is Bounty Hunter weekend, so Bounty Hunter is an individual event. So as far as this is concerned, we do have spell damage this week, which is nice, always great to see. Basically, just don't take Lust and you'll be good to go. It's specifically called the Sibyl of Lust, S-I-B-Y-L. I have no clue how to pronounce that. But a Sibyl of Lust, whenever you see Lust, just don't take it. Everything else, just take it. That's pretty much the entirety of this. Just do it based on rarity order, and just never take Lust. And that's all you really need to do for this event. As far as teams, we have access to Warlock and Generators, specifically off of Purple. This does mean earlier on in the game, you're likely going to have to depend on Hero for your damage source, Black Manacle being a very good option for that. We do have some pretty good mana accumulators available, though, like Azura, Leprechaun, a few others here and there. I believe we even have a couple Empower options if you want to do that. Obviously, Leprechaun is already Empower option, but we have like Mana Drain Empower. We obviously have Leprechaun. You even have Spirit Fox if you kind of want to have one of those, just to make sure they don't ever cast. Stuff like that. As far as the true damage sources that we really have under the higher rarity range, we have things like Arachnean Weaver. If you want to go true damage route, we have Great King. Also for true damage, we have, I just wonder there's one other one here. I should for the other team. Where did it go? What was it? I could have sworn there was another one. Oh yeah, Venoxia! I personally don't use it too often, however, it's really good in this current event, as there aren't that many things that can hit all enemies that are a troop. These are all of our options. Actually, not even all these are, because a lot of these have that one accursed ability. However, when it comes to things that can hit everything, Venoxia is one of the best things we have this week. Creates a bunch of green and blue, which feeds back into itself. You could feed blue into Azura or to your hero with a blue weapon, which I believe is what I do when I show it for the other team when we go over to teams. So, yeah, it can just loop into itself, feeds your blue weapon or Azura or something similar, and yeah, it's good to go. And just keeps true damaging over and over again, and that's pretty much the game plan. Ideally, if you have Venoxia, I would advise using Venoxia. Of course, this is just a budget non-legend team over there, or, non-high rarity team. But Venoxia is pretty much the main damage source you want to use if you have access to it for this event week, especially if you have other true damagers that could potentially synergize with it. But overall, not the easiest, not the hardest. If nothing else, we have Leprechaun, so just put Leprechaun on your team and you'll probably be fine. Leprechaun with one damage source and just kind of tank from there, and you'll be good to go. Anyways, other things that we have going on this week. Tuesday, we have the faction event for Depths of Sin. Wednesday, we have the pet for the Sin of Maraj. Thursday, we have the very bad Doomsayer hero class. Doesn't really do much. A lot of hero classes similar to it. A pretty irrelevant hero class, but you likely don't have it max, so good time to get a little bit more XP on it. And as we can see from the already in-game timer, we have Bounty Hunter. I just skipped on it last time because we had a Vault event last Bounty Hunter. However, we have nothing going on this weekend, so we'll definitely make sure to do it. Bounty Hunter, of course, having some pretty good loot. You can get 2 major orbs all the way at the end of it, a bunch of other loot along the way. Even just doing the free battles gives you a ton of value from it. So definitely make sure to do it, as it is definitely worth not skipping, unless there's a Vault event going on, in which case there's likely isn't this weekend, so definitely make sure to do it. Really good value. Okay, so next. Let's go over all of the troops here. So as far as Soulforge is concerned, I don't believe we had much. I see Arachnean Weaver. I'm just double checking the rest of them, as I didn't actually check it beforehand. But yeah, it seems to just be Arachnean Weaver. So, of course, Arachnean Weaver, absolutely insane for Guild War, also really good at just never losing. It has one of the most absurd trait setups in the entire game. It has Stealthy Impervious, which alone is a really good combo. And on top of that, it has arguably the best summon in the entire game. A 75% chance to summon a web spinner when an enemy dies. Not only is this a very high chance, so sometimes it will fail, and it's very unfortunate when it does, but this is an insanely good summon. Generally, summons, more often than not, are going into your first slot. So any kind of summon that is good in first slot tends to be better than summons that aren't. So if something is a summoner that summons something that is, kind of like a mana accumulator in the first slot, not as good as something that can actually function in first slot. And Web Spinner can definitely function in first slot. It has triple damage to almost everything in the game, assuming it can be webbed and or poisoned, ideally webbed. And very few things have immune to web unless they have impervious, as very few things have the other immunities that have immune to web, other than like the Dark Elves and a few other things from Zolkiri. So unless they have impervious or one of those other similar traits, they will get triple damaged on. So you have a lot of damage pressure just immediately going into first slot. Aside from that, with Stealthy Impervious, it tends to almost never die. And on top of that, it has 4 times web, so they can't really cast against you. You have True Damage for cleaning up kills. And when you clean up a kill, you basically get to explode the whole board for mana accumulation. Well, for whatever reason, still only having 20 mana cost. I'm still very surprised they have not raised this to 24. Like, if there was any Mythic, it should have 24 mana cost. But yeah, well, it's still 20. Definitely make sure to utilize it. They haven't changed it in ever. Actually, if anything, I think they actually buffed it way back when and lowered it to 20. It actually happened. It's kind of funny because they did that with Famine, where like it was 24 and then like they changed it to 20 because it needed a buff. And then like a while later, it's like, oh, 20 is too strong. Let's go nerf it. They never did that with Arachne Weaver yet. It was originally like 22 or 24, then they lowered it to 20. And yeah, it's still there. So yeah, great for Guild War. Unfortunately, it's not like a quick kill troop. But if you're doing it with other True Damage synergy, it can be. Because you just do the True Damage AoE, then you do the Arachne Weaver, it cleans it up, boom, you go from there, do Arachne Weaver again, boom, and that's the whole battle. And yeah, just a great troop to have, and I highly advise make sure to get one eventually at some point. Pretty high priority one to get, especially if you want to win in Guild War. As far as the weapons are concerned, Sin of Maraj doesn't have much. One of the old Halloween weapons. There's Doomed Crossbow, which is fun. It's not a must-have, but it's definitely one of the higher priority for Doom weapons. Full AoE into the blue to Doomskull convert. Oddly enough, really good on Red Guild War Day. I personally don't run it anymore on Red Guild War Day compared to running a more Zolgoth-focused team. But it is pretty good for that. Aside from that, we have all over like the normal mana accumulators. Unfortunately, doing something like a Sin of Maraj weapon, which I believe is this one right here. Yeah, Sin of Maraj. Oh, this is the Explodey one. Where's the Gem Creation one? But generally speaking, Sin of Maraj teams aren't really used. Doomsayer is a very bad hero class for the most part. So you can't really get like a 4-time synergy that well from using a weapon like this. So generally, it's just never really used any of the Sin of Maraj weapons. So if you're going for any weapon, it's definitely going to be Doomed Crossbow. If you're going to go... Oh, I think it's Sickle of Sin. Yeah, there it is, the mixed one. But yeah, generally Sickle of Sin in the book isn't really used as much. If anything, Bane of God is probably used more than the Sickle. But if you're looking for anything, it's definitely Doomed Crossbow. Though, if you had to only get one thing, I would say that Arachne Weaver is higher priority than the Doomed Crossbow. Even though it is one of the top tier Doom weapons, Arachne Weaver is just that good. But if you can get both, that would also be good. Or if you only need one or the other, would also be pretty convenient. Anyways, let's go over a couple teams. And for once, we're actually going to go do a team. As well as probably cover a whole video on it a little bit later this week after we've had more time to test it. Anyways, so first things first, basically Venoxia build, however you want to do it. I did use the paid side weapon with this, mostly because I kind of just want to see how it ends up working. Obviously, if you don't have this, you can use Abral Crystal, that one blue-purple Explodey Crystal. If you don't have that, pretty much just any blue thing, just so you can use Venoxia's blue would be perfectly fine. It doesn't even necessarily need to be hero here, though I figured for the extra mana accumulation would be kind of nice. But Venoxia is basically carrying our team. Venoxia Leprechaun, going to be a very strong team going into this event, and probably the one of the main things that most teams will be composed of, assuming you have it. And that's pretty much the game plan here. Weaver just for the cleanup off of Venoxia. Venoxia to just keep true damaging over and over and over again. Something to utilize all the blue, can be absolutely anything. I just happen to have that weapon there. Abral Crystal being the next option, any other blue being the next option. And of course, Leprechaun is just amazing, so no reason not to use it. Just explode into Empower, great option to have. Next, the lower variant, which I believe we already saw on the other screen there, centered entirely around Black Manacle. And once again, obviously using Leprechaun for it. Azura, really good mana accumulator. You get it for free from completing out the Merlantis questline if you don't already have her laying around. And Dead Parrot, just a nice low rarity thing for some damage pressure. Also gets a little bit of Death Mark. Potentially up to 3 if you get really lucky, though guaranteed of 1, which is kind of nice. So even if you don't kill whatever you target, it might eventually die to the Death Mark. So once you start getting to the higher range, you can kind of Death Mark kill. The faction event for Depths of Sin is a red-purple restriction, though as per usual, you're allowed to use any colored weapon. For the first team here, I figured we just get Phoenix a little try. If I'm not mistaken, we could use Scourge of Honor, so I'm not sure if I'll shift into that or something. But, I don't know, Phoenix, relatively new, so figured to give it another shot just to kind of mess around with it if you happen to have it. Otherwise, you're looking to basically Leprechaun Mirrorlift spam. Any team built around that, I believe this team ends up doing it too. Really strong combination to have in this color range. Obviously, for the higher range, we're running like Zolgoth, and to help Zolgothers go with Mang, so we can actually utilize his skulls a little bit better. into the insta-kill. You could also double up on Zolgoth if you wanted to, or something similar for the fun of it, but figured we utilize the Mang in this particular team. Next one's kind of interesting one. As far as Pure Faction is concerned, there generally is not boost... Hey, 69. There generally is not boost ratio in Underworld. Most things within Underworld do not have it. However, this is one faction that is an exception. It gets to boost based on their attack, not on your attack. This is pretty relevant because in almost every situation, unless you potioned up like crazy, you will have less stats than the enemy when doing level 500 Pure Faction. So to have a boost ratio that boost ratios on their stats is very strong, as they are always going to have higher stats than you in most circumstances in that higher range when you're actually going to be using Pure Faction teams. So this is just great. It just does a bunch more damage. I'm surprised this mechanic doesn't exist more in factions. This is like one of the only, if not the only factions that actually has a boost ratio set up like this. And it is very, very strong, and you basically spam him. Unfortunately, it's single target, so it is a little bit slow, and then you have to kill things one at a time. And one of these attacks, despite the boost ratio, is likely not enough to kill, so you have to like double tap them a lot of times. So it is a little bit of a slow win, but you will win. Luckily, the tank is very tanky. It has 50% score reduction. And it also gets to gain not only life, but armor. It also gets to remove all skulls, so they can't even skull pressure you either, which is kind of, it's kind of good and bad to a degree. If nothing else, it makes you a lot tankier, so you really don't need more than a single Iron Jaw there. There is like a whole resummon thing you can end up doing with one of the troops that exists there, but I feel like it's better off just going with Toteris. If you really feel like you're tanky enough, you could even just go with 4 Toterises. But the Iron Jaw, if you do with it, is pretty much never going to die unless it gets super skull spammed or gets devoured or any other weird mechanic that can kind of bypass through it. But its actual bulk is likely going to be enough for you to never die on it, which is nice. Next, we have the Doomsayer class. This will be specifically Daemons from Sin of Maraj, as far as what you're capable of using. For this, we just kind of spam Barghest. He gets to explode a bunch of reds to start a battle. He gets a boost ratio off himself with all the red allies, which of course is just all the Barghests. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, here's the Burn Fairy Fire. And he also gets to double tap, so you can kind of do it for cleanup option. And of course, we can just kind of spam Black Manacle and win entirely off of that if we so choose. The Barghests are mostly just here for cleanup, or if we can get some excess mana into them. For Bounty Hunter weekend, pretty standard. Obviously, you could run whatever you want to run, but one of the stronger cores is still running Ogre's Tagraki Corpsemere. The new bounty troop that we're getting this weekend is for the new faction, or for the new kingdom, I mean. However, it doesn't really do anything. It's a choice mechanic, just isn't worth using. Which is sad, because it might be one of the only few choice mechanics we ever get for Bounty Hunter, and it's not good, so well, I'm not sure for when, if we're ever going to get another choice mechanic for Bounty Hunter, but the one we're getting this Friday is not really worth using unless they're going to be tweaking it by then, but I highly doubt it at this point. So it's basically just going to be this core, and then just use the new faction troop, or sorry, I keep saying faction, and use the new Bounty Hunter troop in the last slot, just so you get the full bonus for the 30 times multiplier for the weekend event. And lastly, we're actually going to fight. You know what? Let's even fight this team. Ooh, Lord of Slaughter, Wrath. That could actually instantly kill us if we're not careful. So let's not be careful now. So this is just kind of an AoE spam team. Pretty standard setup here. Hey, I kind of needed that. All right, that'll work. Okay. So what we want to do here, obviously take a bunch of mana initially. We're looking for yellow to purple convert. And guess what we have? Yellow to purple convert. So 4 times curse turn 1. That is so good. Of course, one really big synergy that you could do with this is, well, Elementalist. Elementalist gets to stun, and freeze, and burn, and entangle every single time you take an extra turn. But of course, there are pesty things that have immunities to these things. Well, you could just curse them turn 1 with Empower 4 times curse. So that's very strong. You get attack into this. You could Black Manacle Devour, potentially, which we're about to find out if we're going to get that. Let's see. So we're going to go for that. Come on, Devour, Devour. But even if we don't Devour, we're getting attack for our first slot, which could be nice support for that. We're going to go for our thing right here and then Leprechaun away those gems so we can end up taking it for ourselves. Go and get all that mana accumulation and pretty much just go and kill them. Black Manacle is not enough, though. Ooh. Okay, well, we'll just Black Manacle here. That'll be a lot of damage, though not enough to go all the way. It gets a little bit of purple there. And we're just going to have to double skull poke him, it looks like, at this point. And we'll do it this way because there's a chance we'll get it from Sky. Actually, we'll take the red first because then I can just take extra turn skull and then kill him off the board, and we're good to go. But anyways, yeah, I really want to mess with this troop more into the future. Obviously, I'm posting this pretty much as soon as the event went live, so I have not really had any chance to mess around with this. But Bane of Mercy might honestly end up being better than Mercy was when it launched. It has a lot of potential. And I definitely advise messing around with as many teams as you can. It works in skull spam teams. It works in any team that needs 4 times curse, which there's a lot of. and works in any team that needs purple. And if you could somehow combine a way that needs all three, that would be even better. And yeah, really curious to see what this will do into the future. Obviously, these other two traits, unfortunately, really bad. But Empower is all you need to be good. So we see what Leprechaun does. Leprechaun basically, actually, Leprechaun actually has two traits. He has Nature Link plus Empower. Greedy is almost never used under rare circumstance of gold farm teams. But those are pretty much non-existent ever since they nerfed Skeleton Key. They still kind of get used, but not so much. But anyways, that'll wrap it up for now. But yeah, we'll definitely need to cover a video on Bane of Mercy a little bit later this week once we've kind of messed around with it enough, as there's a lot of things that can do. And curious to see. And it's always fun to get those kind of options. It's very rare that we get like a new meta option within the game. Obviously, the meta stays relatively the same these days. Haven't been any like revolutionary patches lately that like completely mess up like what is viable or what isn't. However, and they don't really do balance patches much these days. So, like they kind of balance like per kingdom, but you know, that's quite a bit different than like balancing the entire game at once. So generally the game doesn't really get balanced too much. It basically gets balanced with the introduction of new content. And yeah, that makes anything with immunities quite a bit worse. So 4 times curse and power, that is on its own without even anything else already kind of good. And to have the potential of extra turn while also doing attack gain has a lot of good viability. And kind of cool, that's basically just the inverse of the first Empower troop of Mercy. As Mercy's still pretty good to this day, though in comparison, quite a bit worse. Because Mercy doesn't 4 times Bless, that thing gets to 4 times Curse, which is basically just better Dispel. Because if it was the same as Mercy, it would be 4 times Dispel instead of 4 times Curse. But instead it's Curse, which of course is way more. So curious to see exactly how that ends up panning out. Anyways, guys, feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps a lot and is greatly appreciated. All the teams that we went over are in the description below if you want to go and copy paste any of them. We'll be streaming tonight as we do every single night at 8 p.m. Standard Time, going through all of the tasks for the week, as well as probably messing around with that new trip a little bit more and see what we could build into. Anyways, guys, have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching.